During this time of year, we often get a look at some of the old masters and some of the various depictions and paintings and what have you of Mary. And a lot of them, particularly the ones of Mary with the angel Gabriel making this annunciation, as we heard about in our gospel today, most of these paintings are very idyllic. They show Mary as this beautiful woman in the perfect demographic of just early 20s or so. They show her many times reading a book, and sometimes even they show her in a little area, a little study just offside of the home. And this gives us a very lovely and very idyllic picture of what is going on with the Annunciation, what's going on with this start of the story of Jesus' birth. But the reality would have been very different, because Mary would not have grown up in a large house where she would have had books and a little study offsides the rest of the place. No, Mary would have grown up in a very poor background. And in fact, her country would have been taken over. It would have been run by a foreign empire, by specifically the Roman Empire. And Mary wouldn't have just been a young woman. She certainly wouldn't have been within that ideal early 20s demographic. Mary would have been much younger. In fact, Mary most likely would have been a teenager when this happened. And so it's at this young age that the angel Gabriel comes down and tells Mary that she's about to have a child. And Mary knows enough at this point to ask, well, how is this even possible? Because it shouldn't be. But in the back of her mind, Mary's also got to be wondering what's going to happen to her. Because in her day and age, being found as a betrothed woman, so a little bit more than just being engaged, you were pretty much set for the wedding at that point. So being in this state of being betrothed to Joseph, and all of a sudden being found with a child that is clearly not his, the best that Mary could have hoped for is what Joseph plans to do in Matthew's gospel, to simply divorce her quietly, to keep it all hush-hush. Because more likely in this day and age, Mary could have been killed. She could have been stoned to death for being pregnant by someone other than her betrothed husband. In spite of this realization, in spite of everything else going on, Mary realizes that this is all coming from God. And with that, Mary has the amazing amount of faith to trust in the Lord. Mary has the courage to say, "Here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." The story of Jesus' birth is not as idyllic as we might like it to be, and certainly not as it's often depicted in art and other forms of media. No, the birth story of Jesus was fraught with danger, especially at the very beginning, especially even before Jesus is born. It's important for us to remember that this is not an idyllic time. This is a time fraught with danger. And it's important for us to remember that, especially when we are in times that are tough or bad. Mary knew what it was like to live with uncertainty. And she knew what it was like to have all kinds of things, all of the most difficult things thrust upon her, seemingly at random. And yet, Mary remains to us a great example of faith. Even in the worst of times, she trusted that God would make all things right in the end. Our hope is that in following Mary's example, we can do the same.